Every single day, we're totally bombarded with breaking news, right? Explosions, geopolitical crises, shifting borders. It's a lot. But what if I told you that the most consequential global shift of our entire lifetime isn't happening with a massive bang, but in absolute deadly silence? We're going to unpack exactly how the very foundation of global trade is being fundamentally re-engineered from the ground up.
Think about the sheer contrast we're dealing with right now. On one hand, you have all the noise, the daily headlines, missiles flying in the Middle East, aircraft carriers deploying, just this constant loud hum of kinetic conflict. And naturally, it demands our attention. But then on the flip side, you have the silence. This massive, deadly, quiet, structural shift happening over in Beijing. Honestly, it's a classic case of misdirection. Because while Western military resources and our collective public attention are totally absorbed by all that loud chaos, an entirely new global economic architecture is quietly being cemented.
So here is the absolute million-dollar question for us today. While we, and by we, I mean all of us casually watching the evening news, are completely distracted by missiles and regional conflicts, is the very foundation of how we buy, sell, and power our lives being stolen right under our noses? It's a massive curiosity gap, and to really understand what the sources are telling us, we've got to look past all the smoke.
Chapter 1. The Smokescreen.
To truly understand what China is doing right now, we actually first have to understand what they are deliberately avoiding. The source material highlights something fascinating. China aims to displace U.S. dominance without replacing it. And that distinction is absolutely crucial. Beijing has literally no interest in becoming the world's policeman. They're not trying to replace the U.S. military footprint in places like the Middle East. Instead, they're being incredibly pragmatic. They're basically just watching as the West expends immense military and financial resources to manage these crises, while they focus entirely on diplomacy and securing long-term economic leverage.
It's really like this. While the United States is bogged down playing the role of the neighborhood security guard, deploying THAAD and Patriot air defense batteries, China is playing the merchant. They step in, acting as a neutral mediator, quietly securing heavily discounted energy deals and building critical infrastructure. They are essentially letting the U.S. foot the massive security bill, while they just extract the resources.
Moving on to Chapter 2, the re-engineering. This is where we see China shifting away from just being the world's factory and pivoting to building what is essentially a war-ready infrastructure, a fortress economy. Let's break this down, almost like we're 5 years old. Imagine your local neighborhood. Step 1. China is basically buying the only grocery store in town, meaning they are locking down the refinement of critical minerals and manufacturing. Step 2. They are buying up all the roads leading to that store, controlling global trade routes and ports through the Belt and Road Initiative. And Step 3. They're building a massive basement pantry. They are aggressively stockpiling reserves, so that if the neighborhood ever goes into a total lockdown, they're the only ones who for sure won't starve.
Let's actually put some hard data to that analogy, because the numbers are staggering. By 2026, China targets 70% domestic use of advanced silicon wafers. They have set a hard, strict 2027 deadline to completely eliminate dependence on Western technology in key sectors. And what about that basement pantry? Well, in 2025 alone, their stockpiling budget for grain, oil, and strategic minerals hit 16.7 billion euros. This isn't random. It is a surgical, methodical shift toward autarky, which just means absolute self-reliance.
But here's the catch. Producing everything at home really isn't enough if your trade routes can easily be blocked. Right now, Western navies control major maritime choke points, like the Malacca Strait. If a conflict breaks out, China's economy could literally be starved of energy. So, they are actively bypassing it. They're cutting up to 9 days off transit times by using the melting Arctic Northern Sea Route. They are pushing cargo directly over land via the Eurasian Middle Corridor, getting deliveries down to just 18 to 23 days. And through the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, they've secured decades-long access to the Gwadar Port, right on the Arabian Sea. They are literally bulletproofing their entire supply chain.
And you know what? It's completely working. Just let this number sink in. $1.189 trillion. That was China's record-breaking trade surplus in 2025. And the truly wild part about this is that while their exports to the U.S. plummeted by 20%, their total global exports actually went up. How is that even possible? Well, they've aggressively pivoted away from Western-dominated markets. They are flooding the global South with goods, deeply embedding their own technology and standards across developing nations.
Which brings us to Chapter 3, the weaponization of trade.
Now that their fortress is built, Beijing has started to actively deploy its economic weapons. Currently, 70% of the entire world's rare earth production, along with a near absolute monopoly on the refining capacity, is controlled by China. And these aren't just fancy rocks, okay? These are the absolutely essential ingredients for electric vehicle batteries, consumer electronics, and crucial military hardware like our fighter jets. In geopolitical terms, this is known as an assassin's mace, basically a trump card that lets you overpower a much stronger adversary at the exact right moment.
And in 2025, they went ahead and played that card. Through this calculated strategy of selective decoupling, China slapped severe export controls on key materials like gallium and germanium. They aggressively denied rare earth licenses to the EU. They are not just throwing darts blindfolded here. They are deliberately pointing their geo-economic guns straight at the US and European defense industrial base. They essentially pulled the rug right out from under NATO's rearmament efforts, proving beyond a shadow of a doubt that they can tighten the economic thumbscrews on the West whenever they want.
But controlling raw physical materials? That's really only half the battle. The other half is purely financial. Enter CPEC, the cross-border interbank payment system. See, for decades, the true superpower of the United States hasn't actually just been its military. It's been the US dollar and the SWIFT messaging network, which is what allows America to impose those crippling financial sanctions we always hear about. CPEC is China's custom-built parallel network designed to bypass that old system entirely.
To really grasp this, think about it like running a small business. For years, you've been forced to use this one clunky, old credit card machine. Let's call that the US dollar and SWIFT. The company that owns that machine can freeze your funds, charge you crazy fees, or just kick you out entirely if they don't like how you do business. So what did China do? They built a new direct machine. And now they're getting countries like Russia, Iran, and even Saudi Arabia to plug right into this new machine using local currencies and the petro-yuan. They are completely and totally sidestepping the old boss.
And if you're sitting there thinking this is just some distant theory, listen to this. $245 trillion. That is the equivalent dollar volume of UN-denominated transactions processed by CPEC in just a single year. It is a fully operational, totally parallel financial reality that is actively eroding the dollar's dominance right now as we speak.
Finally, Chapter 4, the reality check.
So what does all of this heavy macroeconomic data actually mean for you and me? Let's talk about your pocketbook in about 5 years. Because make no mistake, this silent war has highly direct consequences. As China continues to lock down these rare earths and finishes building out its fortress economy, you are absolutely going to see higher prices for consumer tech and electric vehicles. All these fractures in the global supply chains mean that stubborn inflation, it's likely here to stay. And as China floods the global south with subsidized goods and sets their own tech standards, we are going to witness a massive global shift in manufacturing jobs. The basic economic stability that we've all kind of taken for granted is fundamentally fracturing.
We are ultimately looking at a very stark winner and loser scenario here. The sources make it abundantly crystal clear. Global stability and economic leverage are decisively shifting away from a divided, totally distracted West and moving straight towards a self-reliant, highly disciplined fortress over in the East. While we were busy watching the distraction, the actual reality of global power was completely re-engineered.
Which leaves us with a final, pretty provocative thought to wrap up today's explainer. When you step back and look at the whole board, when you see all these calculated moves being made in the shadows, who do you really think is going to win this silent war? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We genuinely want to hear your predictions on this one. Thank you so much for joining us as we unpacked all this data, and we will definitely see you on the next explainer.